Good morning, everybody. This is John Sfiocla with GenAI News from GAI Insights. We have our team of analysts here. We got a pretty good cadre. And this is brought to you by CustomGPT.ai, an easy way to start in the robot wars. Fantastically easy tool. And we actually have some news about how good their RAG database is in the context of creating these robots. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya. Busy news day. Tanya.
Thank you, John. Yes, again, we have another exciting day of news. We have 6 articles to review. We're going to start with Cerebras Systems, promising to have one of the fastest AI chips in the market. Then we're going to learn about SEMA, a generalist AI agent that is learning from video games. I mean, my kids would love this. Then we're going to move on to robots, a topic we love to hear more about, and a robot called Figure One and how it's very revolutionary because it's using OpenAI vision language models, and it's showing not just dexterity, but reasoning. And then we have a couple, like John mentioned, we have a research paper on an independent research done on RAG accuracy that highlights our sponsor, Custom GPT, ranking better than some of the giants out there. So very interesting article. And then we have a couple of new product announcements, one from Microsoft on Copilot for security, and another one from Data IQ with an LLM cost tracking tool. I love that article. So let's get started. And Ankash, if you can kick us off with the first article. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Tanya. So the first one that we have today is from Cerebras Systems. So they have unveiled world's fastest AI chip with 4 trillion transistors. And in the article, they say that with this chip, training a 1 trillion parameter model is as straightforward as training a 1 billion parameter model on GPUs.
Awesome. Well, Tim, we're happy to have you here. Would you like to get us started on this article?
Sure. It's an announcement. It is this chip is available. It's they don't have a lot of big companies talking about using it, particularly the big cloud providers. So I'm not sure what the penetration will be, what the pricing is, but the specs are fabulous. There's a 5 nanometer, which is just about the limit of what people can do, and the number of transistors and the amount of onboard RAM is way beyond anything currently available from the other chip makers, and the benchmarks show it. So this is maybe a glimpse into the future, a few years from now, for the mainstream players.
And the ranking you
and I would still say probably optional. This, I think, is a niche product right now. It could go mainstream if it gets inexpensive enough and deployed enough. Certainly has substantial advantages in performance, but the question is, what's the cost-performance trade-off? And that is not clear. But given that we haven't heard every computer cloud vendor on earth screaming to buy these things, my guess is the cost-performance trade-off is not overwhelming. So I'd say optional.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. I think on the spreadsheet, I saw a couple of other rankings. So John, Adam, would one of you like to comment?
Yeah, I thought I ranked it more important just because, this is it seems like, and we don't have a lot of performance comparisons, but at the speeds and feeds level, it seems like, a system which has considerably better performance, better use of power. It's got some serious, uses. Both the Lawrence Livermore Labs and a number of other folks are using it, and they're building some of the world's fastest supercomputers on the back of it. It just seemed like, our audience should understand the leading edge of, this technology's moving so quickly. Paul was at an event at MIT yesterday, and Stephen Wolfram was going back and forth with an MIT economist about, hey, the MIT economist is doing labor substitution at current costs. And Wolfram said, look, 3 years from now, this stuff's going to be radically cheaper and radically better. So anyway, I just think that's why I rate it important.
I did too, Tanya, because I think our audience should know that this is coming. It's the next level of computing power that it is becoming available.
Yeah.
Just to add one thing on that, I think it was earlier this week or last week, we were talking about Saudi Aramco, who trained their own model. And one of the specs it mentions in here is with their more compact 4-system configuration, you could fine tune a 70 billion parameter model like Llama 70B in a day. Whereas with their full scale, you could completely train a model from scratch in a day. So I think it's important that our executives understand on their roadmap, like the capabilities of being able to train a model in a day are coming fast. Now, there are the limitations, as Tim said, about scale, but as we start looking even 6 months down the line, as we start looking at budget for 2025, we need to be considering, and I believe they do more so, the reality of fine tuning and training your own models, which is going to be an important part of this landscape. So I rated it important.
Yeah.
I mean, you raised a super important point, Adam, which is I think a lot of people are underestimating the time compression that's going to happen. So it's not just cost, it's time. And that's very, and, you know, as the psychedelic philosopher Terence McKenna said, look, these things learn a billion times faster than we do because they're living in nanotime. So when the intelligence comes, it'll come instantaneously to us. Anyway.
Okay, well, Tim, it sounds like we're kind of steering towards unimportant on this article.
Okay.
All right, so let's move on to the next one.
Okay, next one is from Google DeepMind. So they have launched a new agent called SEMA, which can do things in 3D virtual environments and especially video game settings.
Akash, we're not
Akash,
seeing it on the
think
screen.
Yeah, I think the article is not displaying on the screen. But
Okay.
while you pull that up, let's get started on SEMA with
There we go.
David.
Yeah, so I was on the border on this one. I could be pulled in either direction of optional, important, lean toward optional because it's still just research at this point, but lean toward important because obviously the implications of what they're doing here are important in that, you know, they're basically working on something that they're hoping will enable agentic systems, right? Which we're thinking we're going to be moving towards. I mean, we're almost definitely moving towards that. We've seen some hints of it already, including yesterday, the Devon tool that automatically creates code on its own without any human action necessarily needed. So here they've trained, video games are kind of a typical stomping ground to train AI systems on going back, decades. So here they've trained it on multiple, I think it was at 30 games, basically. And one of the interesting things that I noted in the article was that when they trained a system on all 30 games, it actually performed better on each game than a system that was trained only on that game. So it's showing some, generalizability, which is really cool. So I'd like to hear what others said. I'm definitely on the fence on this one because it's super cool, but super researchy.
I'll jump in here, Dave, because I like that last part that you mentioned, how they trained that the game where they did not train the agent, it was irrelevant, right? I mean, the agent learned so much about all the other video games. It was able to transfer that knowledge. To me, that's just amazing, and especially when you I've dealt with a lot of children with learning disabilities throughout my life, just how it's happened. The ability to really transfer, your intelligence, your application of what you're learning into other pieces of the world is not an easy thing to do, and to be able to teach that to something. So I was blown away by that capability. It really shows that we're heading into this reasoning aspect. So I gave it important because of that. I think it's very important to understand that, hey, you don't have to train them in everything. They can learn on their own as well. But yeah, let's see if anyone else backs us up with an important.
It's also good to see something positive come out of the Google camp.
Yes.
I rated it as important. I kind of have the same view on the other side, which is it's an interesting advance in training these models. I don't see it as necessarily yet generalization because video games are still a pretty highly specialized world. So you have to be careful not to draw the line too fast and too far. But really interesting that training less across a wider variety seems to be more effective than training more specifically. So range is better than depth. And that actually is kind of more like regular thinking, not to anthropomorphize too much. But I want to see more. But it was interesting and may cause some rethinking of how things are trained. So it may be more important to have good data across a broader range of your enterprise than deep data across a single silo.
Yeah.
I'd just push back and say, what's a busy exec going to do with this, right? It's super interesting and it's in research still, and I don't see how it's going to affect any of their decisions in the near future or their roadmaps. So I've rated it back down to optional. I was on the fence. You made a lot of good points, but there's just so much news coming through the desk these days.
Yeah. It is a research piece. You're right, Adam. There's no tangible product that's coming out of it yet.
I was also on the optional piece for this one because it's super interesting. You make really good point about how, the implications of how it learns and the like, but it's for the busy execs, it's optional, I would argue.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of that would apply to an executive is this idea of creating almost like a game of your factory, right? Of your manufacturing plant and then training that, you know what I mean? Like taking it to that. I worked for many years at a pharmaceutical and I'm going like 10 years ago. They were training all of us on this idea of how would we operate in a video game? How would we work in a video game?
Yeah. So digital twins idea. Yeah, possible. But I get it. It's not there, guys. It's just, it's just starting.
All right. Well, we'll put it as optional with hey, very important concepts here. But yeah, let's move on because we still have 4 more articles. Thank you for the input. Ankaj, let's go to number 3, which I think is the robot one.
The one from Figure Robert. Just
Yes.
give me a second. Some issue with
This one. I hope we can play the video because if it's not too long, but I think it was like a minute.
It's quite amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think this notion of like what the range versus depth, I think, as you put it, Tim, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Ankash, go ahead.
All right. Well, Ankash pulls it up. Why don't we? Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah. So this news is about the Figure's humanoid robot. So we saw this in December, and they did a partnership with OpenAI recently, and now they are using OpenAI to provide reasoning and language understanding abilities to this robot.
Excellent. Luda.
Yeah, I was on the between optional and important. We've highlighted that robots are really accelerating and their reasoning abilities with the LLMs, it's just the layer that makes them accelerate essentially. So we've just this week reviewed an article of OpenAI spinout that provided robots with a sort of reasoning ability like humans do. This one is using OpenAI, do the same thing. And maybe a week ago, we also highlighted the applications of robots in warehousing, rated it as essential. So we've been saying this, and for that reason, I thought this was optional. But if if people have missed it, maybe we should rate this as important. But for me, who have been watching it, it's optional.
Yeah, I put it as important to essential because I'm thinking about somebody trying to make a presentation inside an organization about where the stuff's going, and this is pretty impressive, right? He gives general. It's very short. It's very clean. Gives general instructions. Give me the edible. Give me something to eat. The thing picks up the apple, knowing it's the only edible thing on the table. It can talk to him while it's doing planning and executing activities. I just thought if I were going to go try to get money for something, this would be part of the presentation.
Yeah, I can, as I said, I think we could do important or even essential.
Hey, and if we've convinced Luda that a robot article is important to essential, I feel like it means we should go with essential.
All right. Stop now. Right.
I also kudos to them for not editing out the little bit of latency that the robot has, right? I mean, I think it's perfectly acceptable at this point to show something that impressive with a little bit of latency. And I think they learned their lesson from some other editing that has been done on these videos. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, I think people should watch every video like this they can. It's a minute and a half or something, and it does show you how fast things are moving. And I'm with John. You know,
Okay, essential it is.
Yeah, you know, one thing I would encourage you, their website has some pretty nice statistics. They talk about 10 million jobs are unfulfilled today, right? 7 million of those are in warehouse, transportation, and retail. There are only 6 million people available to fill these positions. So their whole thing is, hey, we're going to run out of people. We're going to need these robots to help us. So I like their website. It was very simple.
Yeah, I agree. And the reason I'm into robots, because my mom is elderly, right? She's 97 and she has difficulty walking. So I was on the lookout for a robot who could actually help her with her gait and actually work with her using the sensors and the like to tell her how to straighten up and blah, blah, blah. So I feel it's coming. I mean, you need to be able to pay for these robots in the elderly space, but for these ones, good point, Tanya. This is going to fulfill a need. Yeah, you've talked me into essential. Let's move on.
All right, we're going with essential. Thank you.
Sorry, Michael. Michael Novak thinks it's optional, so sorry about that.
All right, so next is the Microsoft and security. Copilot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the next one is from Microsoft. So it's around the AI Copilot that they have, and they are launching a Copilot for security with pay-as-you-go pricing next month.
All right, and Tim?
Yep. So here we go with the arms race. So now we have an AI bot that is going to help us fight the AI bots that are fighting us already. But that's the way it's going to be. I wish we could get our arms around the fact that maybe we should look at the basic systems and try and get to the roots of these problems, but we didn't do that with cybersecurity, and I don't expect it here. So I expect the arms race to continue. I think this is important to essential. It's going to be absolutely critical, just like patching your operating system and keeping your firewalls up to date and all this kind of stuff. Microsoft is certainly in a strong position, given how much they get attacked. They have a lot of data to feed into any kind of a model working on this stuff. So certainly if I was a Microsoft shop, this would be at the top of my essential list to figure out how I get plugged into this stuff and how I get automatic upgrading done every probably nanosecond. It's going to be pretty soon, given the rate that these things can compute.
Yeah. And if you're an managed service security provider,
yeah. And if you want to go
a good part of your business.
The Darth Vader version of the world, imagine if there's 7 million of those figure robots out there. What happens if somebody can get a hold of them all? That 7 million army is pretty powerful.
Oh, now we're getting into doomsday, doomsday scenarios.
Star Wars.
I was on the fence between optional important, and at first I was saying, well, it should come as no surprise that Microsoft is putting Copilot in another part of their infrastructure. It should be expected. The one thing I think that bumped it up to important for me was the fact that it's not the same monthly pricing model that they have for the rest of their Copilot. It's pay as you go.
Yeah, but
which I think is significant. It's important for people to be aware that this has a different pricing and it's more tuned to the model and to the use case. And I would expect we're going to see more of that from Microsoft in the future as well.
Yeah, although they may be well aware that people are just going to buy this thing all the time. They may think they can make more money on the pay-as-you-go model, and then they'll feel great when they can only pay $30 a month or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've heard that have balked at the price tag of Copilot trying to add that on for their workers. So maybe they're testing this out to see if this will be better. And I have to say, like seeing all of the attacks against Azure listed together at the end of the article was like a stark reminder for me, because you see them come up one at a time, right? And then you kind of forget how many there have been over just the last 2 years. So that was
Yeah. If you want a fun exercise, dig up your home router's manual, and you can look at the attacks on your home router, and there's generally many per hour, often many per second.
Yeah.
All right, so I think I'm hearing important. I heard some essential. So who wants to break it up here? I mean, to me, this was definitely important for our audience.
I vote for important. I don't know if it quite rises to essential because it's a product release.
Because the product is not yet available. So let's leave it as important. Great. Let's move on to the, I think we have 2 more. Yeah. So, yep, Custom GPT.
So the next one is from our sponsor, Custom GPT. So according to some new rankings from tonic.ai, Custom GPT is outperforming OpenAI in RAG benchmarks.
Adam.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. Thanks. First of all, yeah, let's go Boston. You know, we have the East Coast representing as another leader in the AI wars, right? Always love to see that. I rated this as important. Look, we've talked a fair bit about RAG and about the importance of being able to use your own data as part of the reasoning with these large language models. Just earlier this week, we had the news from Cohere about their Command R, which was their RAG for enterprise. And even on our learning lab this week, Kevin Petrie was talking about vector databases and the role they play in RAG. This specific piece of news shows CustomGPT.ai as the leader ahead of Cohere, OpenAI, Google, and others. The news itself is significant for them, maybe not for our leaders, but if they're evaluating the landscape, it's probably important to know where CustomGPT sits in this, as well as more generally, the importance that RAG is going to be playing in their pipeline, and they need to be getting that message. And I feel like one last time, let's call that important, flag it, make sure that people understand the importance of RAG. But I could be probably talked down to optional if others made a good case for it.
Any comments from the team?
I would back important, not because Custom GPT is our sponsor, but to flag another thing, and that is metrics. And there are several metrics here that are being used. One is performing against the bigger models, but also accuracy, right? And there's the beginnings of these metrics that are happening that are very important to note.
Thank you, Luda and Adam. All right, we'll go with important for this article. And as we're getting close to time, let's move on to the last one.
Okay, so the next one is from a company called Dataku, and they are providing a GenAI cost monitoring tool. So they have a LLM mesh platform, and as part of that platform, they are introducing this LLM cost guard tool.
Yeah, thank you. It's really great to see this, right? We had this experience when cloud came about as well. Costs can go out the roof really quick. So, John, would you like to kick us off on this one, please?
Yeah, sure. I actually rate it as essential because I think understanding what your actual costs are and relative costs are is central to any of our users. I don't know if there are other cross-platform tools like this. If there are, I would then downgrade this to important or optional. But this is the first one I've seen that does that kind of cross-platform comparison for people doing models. And, for those folks that we've talked to who are deploying models, this is a significant thing to pay attention to. So I rate it as mentioned.
Oh, sorry, John. I think they mentioned one other company. I don't know if like to your point, if it does all the platforms. I can't remember the name of it. It started with an A.
Yep. I give it an essential too, because again, beyond the product itself, nobody's paying attention to this stuff right now. Tanya, to your point, I do remember this with, cloud's so much cheaper. Cloud's so much cheaper. Well, that's true up to a certain point. There's always a crossover. And when people find that crossover, it's often quite painful and difficult to revert. So I think just getting people's minds around the fact that cost is real and you need to start thinking about it as soon as possible, to me, makes this essential.
Yeah. Well, and like we're learning, right? They're changing the pricing models, right? We're going from
All the more
monthly now
reason
to
you're gonna
$4
need
an hour for some,
Right.
you know.
Right. All the more reason you're going to need tools to help, because as with cloud models and these other complex models, it's very difficult to predict what usage patterns generate what costs.
Yeah. So I agree that essential is probably a good ranking unless someone else. Oh, go ahead, Luda.
The only thing about essential is that this particular vendor, right, and it's the product announcement, right? So this particular vendor, I wonder whether you need to install their environment to be able to assess the cost. And so it's essentially double cost. So I'm a little concerned about that, giving it essential.
That's a good point.
Announcement. So it is certainly, and as you know, I'm all about metrics, right? So metrics are critical, and the cost metrics, particularly in this world. But whether this guy's gonna win this, I don't know. So it's important to flag it, but I wouldn't necessarily go to up to essential.
Yeah, the concept is important. It's not like we're saying this product is the essential product, but the concept is important. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yep. We can go with important.
I would agree.
Okay.
I'd go with important on this one.
All right. And the other company name was Aporia that the article mentions.
Yeah. Okay.
There'll be more, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, totally.
All right. We'll go with important. Good. So do we have the summary page, Ankash? If not, I try to keep as many notes. We have quite a bit of importance, actually. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 importance, 1 optional, and 1 essential.
Whoa.
Did I get that right?
Big news day.
Yep.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. So the new chip, the fastest chip, Cerebras, that we gave that important. Essential is the Figure 1 robot. And then the Microsoft announcement, the Data IQ announcement, and the custom GPT research, the RAG research as important. So great. They're small articles to our audience. Don't be overwhelmed. These are not big articles. So, you'll get a lot out of making an investment of, say, 10, 15 minutes. Good. Back to you, John. Thank you for the discussion, team.
Yes, thank you, Tanya, for taking us through that important news day. And, one of the things is I just want to repeat, self-made billionaires read like crazy. So I have no sympathy for people who don't make time to read. So but we do try to make it efficient for you. So on that, thanks to CustomGPT.ai, our sponsor, and congrats on the great rating on the RAGs comparison. In terms of, remember, we have a learning lab every Monday. And in the email out, we will make sure that link is in there, as well as the news articles. And, look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Same time, same place. Thanks, everybody.